Today, we stand in the museum that bears Mr. Banks' name to celebrate our history, the history of the Detroit chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, who have had the consummate job of covering a predominantly black city for the past 40 years.
Through these 40 years, we have done wonderful things. We've not only stayed true to our core mission of advocating for black journalists and media professionals in Metro Detroit, which has not only included offering them programming, but it's also included coming into some of the newsrooms here to talk to management about issues affecting our members. Sometimes those conversations have been tough, but they've been productive, and we like to think fruitful.
As you all know, in many cases, black journalists have great passion for journalism itself, but they oftentimes have great passion for the community, and that comes through in your work. And it makes you the kind of person to be able to spend part of your career telling the story and part of your career shaping the story.
The Detroit NABJ will hold a gala and silent auction as part of the anniversary festivities. The organization also plans to award several scholarships to the next generation of journalists as part of its commitment to Black excellence.
We are a great organization to be a part of. We do a lot of mentorship. We do a lot of advocacy. We do a number of different things within the community, and we are the front lines for journalism in the African American community.
For diversity to be included in the media means so much to me. When I go into the newsroom and I see people who look like me, it makes me feel comfortable.
What I see the future of the NABJ is to continue to encourage us to celebrate who we are so we can tell the stories that must be told from a unique perspective that comes from the richness of who we are as Black people.
Nicole Avery Nichols is one of the co-chairs for the Detroit NABJ's 40th anniversary celebration. I spoke to her about the organization's plans for the coming year, as well as its legacy, providing services and programs for Black journalists. Nicole, so great to see you. This is exciting.
Great to see you also. So excited to have the opportunity to speak with you.
So I don't even know if you know this, but I actually met Chuck, my husband, at an NABJ conference, a regional. So this organization has long been near and dear to my heart. So take us back 40 years. How did things get started? And then we'll come to the present and all the exciting things that are going to be going on.
Yes. So I just have to say also, Trudy, that I met my husband, Darren Nichols, also through NABJ right here in Detroit on my first day of work at the Detroit News. So,
awesome.
Yeah, so we have that in common.
A lot of media families in this community.
Absolutely. So we are so thrilled and excited to be celebrating, 40 years of Black media excellence here in Detroit. The chapter was founded, in 1982, right? So that's decades, of really, really pouring into this rich media landscape. And it's one of the Detroit is one of the earlier chapters. It's one of the biggest chapters across the country. We've had our ups and downs and our triumphs. But what we do have is just a legacy of folks who have come through this area. Lots of African-American firsts, lots of success stories have come through Detroit. And those of us who came after, I'm looking at myself in this market. I said I met my husband on my first day of work in 1997. So that's, 2 decades or so working in Detroit media. Those of us who came to Detroit from other places have really benefited, from the work of Detroit NABJ and its members all along in Metro Detroit. So we are so thrilled to share this year and next year more of our history.
So who are some of the founding members, people that people may be familiar with from back in the day?
Well, those are things that we're, working on now and doing some research and reconciling. Ken Coleman is our resident historian, and he's working on a project. It's not that we're trying to keep it under wraps, but we would really like to roll this project out starting in September, where we highlight some of these key moments in Detroit NABJ history. We want to talk a little bit about the founders. We want to talk a little bit about, some of the first in this area. We plan to do that twice a month. All the way from September until February. And we are working with, these things will be posted on our site, detroitnabj.org. And we are working with a local media partner on this. So you'll be hearing more about that as soon as we have that relationship formalized.
Exciting. That's something for everybody to look forward to. People, you hear about organizations like this, but I don't know if people understand the significance and the support that an organization like the National Association of Black Journalists, particularly going back 40 years ago, there weren't that many African Americans in the business. So to have that camaraderie and that support, what would you say was the biggest impact in the early days?
Right. So I would say that I totally agree, with the framing of this question and what you've shared there. And I think that that is something we should talk more about. We all know that media is, can be fickle. And it can be extremely hard for communities of color to make inroads into media. After the murder of George Floyd, we had what some might call a racial reckoning in this country. But those of us in media have seen this several times before, where we start talking about opportunity and diversity and equity. And these things are on the top of everyone's mind, but those of us who've worked in media for a long time, like those NABJ members who started 40 years ago, 30 years ago, know that these same conversations were happening back then. And what an organization like Detroit NABJ does is make space, right? So you have a built-in mentorship group. You have a built-in advocacy group, right? A lot of time is spent advocating for African American journalists and Black communities, advocating to media companies for the recognition of issues that impact communities or the way communities, are portrayed in media. You have mentoring, you have coaching, you have lifelong relationships through these organizations that enable and empower, right, and pour into its media members and give them the strength to walk into these spaces that oftentimes are not friendly and are not really set up to accommodate or recognize, right, those journalists and their life experiences.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, George Floyd is an example of a news story in recent years, but I'm thinking all the way back to Rodney King and things like that. What were some of the other milestone news stories that really changed the way people looked at what journalists have to do?
Right. So, you raised the touchstone for, my generation. I'm a Generation X journalist. So before George Floyd, for me, it was Rodney King. As a New Yorker, it was, the teenagers, the young kids who were accused in Central Park, right? And just, unpacking some of how the media swarmed on those children, right? And didn't tell a fuller story, or didn't attempt to, just took whatever the cops were saying and the people in power were saying at face value. That indicates, as things like Malice Green, et cetera, here in Detroit, the 67 riots in Detroit, and how, or the uprising, as we would say, that those things indicate the need for, right, diversity of voice, diversity of lens. And oftentimes what we see in media is when these things come to bear, then you have doors open and more diversity, right? But what happened in the 20 or so years between a Rodney King situation, right, and a George Floyd situation in media? How I experienced it as a media member, first starting at the Detroit News and then moving on over to the Free Press, was a shrinking, right?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, a shrinking in terms of how diverse our staffs looked like.
Absolutely. So we're already into our last couple of minutes, and I want to make sure that we highlight the wonderful things that are going to be happening throughout
Yeah.
this year-long celebration. So just give us a few highlights. You've already given us that one tidbit, which is exciting, that we'll be getting these historical pieces. So what else will be going on?
Yes, you're going to want to definitely plug in to our website, DetroitNABJ.org. We will be doing the history facts there as well. But starting on September 8th, we're launching what we call our If You Came Through, Come Through campaign, right? If you came through Detroit, come through for our scholarship fund, right? These efforts are all about celebrating, but also giving back. We plan to give an unprecedented amount of scholarship dollars this year. Our target is 10. We're seeking to raise $40,000. So starting on the 8th, our t-shirt campaign will launch on our website. It's $50 for any journalist who's come through Detroit. They have an opportunity to get their name on this commemorative garment. And we have a few more surprises in the fall. However, the pinnacle, the marquee event that we're planning, we're thinking in spring 2023, is our gala roast. And we will be honoring and roasting the legendary Chuck Stokes.
Awesome. My hubby. It's a
My
wonderful.
baby,
He's looking
absolutely.
forward to it. He's very excited about it. And I think it'll be a lot of fun for a fabulous cause.
Absolutely. And, we are really serious about our journalism. We really pour into our newsrooms, broadcast, our public relations business, et cetera. But we also like to laugh and have fun. So we are just so thrilled that Chuck is going to take this journey with us, and we're working on a date. We're looking for sponsors. All of that information will be up on our website.